And hello, you lovelies. Let's talk about episode 3 of Dune Prophecy. It is called Sisterhood Above All Else, which I love how many meanings this episode title can have. Before we get into it, if you want to hit that subscription bell, it would mean a lot to me. I talk about comic books and movies and TV, and I really focus on the comic books themselves, the actual paper books. I love diving into each individual book. I cover everything with the lens of comics in mind. Obviously, Dune is more of a sci-fi thing, but in the genre of nerdery, cover all that stuff. So if you're into pop culture, you're into comics, into movies or TV, hit that subscription bell. Also, please leave a comment below. I love the community that's being built. I love that Dune has always had a really strong community, but with the advent of a very popular HBO show, it's growing. So I'd love to hear from you beneath, because I don't know this world. I haven't read the books, but I love the movies. So coming from that lens, I love having those conversations. So please comment below and leave a like while you're pressing buttons. All right, let's talk about Dune episode 3. I, first of all, love that this accomplishes empathy, but uses not chronological storytelling to build that empathy in very interesting ways. The Harkonnen are not the most likable people, but the young Harkonnens give us enough of that flexibility of morality that we can imagine a bit of empathy for them. I really like that this show is from the lens of the villains of Dune. The Harkonnens versus the Atreides is the Montague and Capulet, and that comes up more later, but from the lens of the other side, like telling the story from the Sith and looking at the Jedi. And that's actually some of the visuals here. Like, obviously, George Lucas, big old fan of Frank Herbert's work. And you see a lot of, the lore in Star Wars that feels very Dune. But I particularly here love that we're seeing a Hoth-ish family that we know develops into tyrants going after a Endor-based family. And I love that the villain of the series is the one we connect with. It's a really interesting narrative because we know what the Harkonnens become, but they use a flashback to show them hardening. We see the younger versions of them and what they're capable of. We know this rivalry grows, and I also love the use of the lore growing by having the Harkonnens on this horrible, inhospitable planet with the fur of these whales, and we know from Dune that that is where they get their insane wealth and their galactic power. But we see Mark Addy in a tiny little hovel making the money he can off this whale fur and blubber and stripping these animals, and it's really brutal to see. There's a lot of really hard to see animal stuff in this episode. We'll talk about that more in a second, but the animal being stripped in a desolate environment, he is there and his family is there in that desolate environment. But then in however many years, the 30 years it takes to go to our timeline in the show, the modern timeline, the adult versions of these characters, in that time, he's in that skyscraper. He's in that, penthouse, this insane, lush city with all this power and wealth. And that's what exponential wealth does in 30 years, that compounding over the thousands of years to the point that they're running the galaxy. I thought it was a really cool way to show just wealth amassing and the terrors of what, being a billionaire turning into a trillionaire, turning into running everything. Loved that as a commentary. But as far as the story itself, the use of the flashback, I loved that couple. I really loved them. And that was so brutal when you find out the last name, when you hear Atreides chanted around the fire, and it's like a little bit of a red flag. And then within 5 minutes, the full red flag of Harkonnen, Atreides, and why is it so quiet? I love that they made that family welcoming and lovely. Him describing, how much they're going to love her, and her being like, oh, you're so close to your family, and how much she genuinely loved him, showing she's willing to do anything. And that's what I love about the title is Sisterhood Above All Else is about the two of them. It's about the sisterhood of the Bene Gesserit. It's about sisterhood above all else between their decisions and her leaving her family to be with her sister and joining the Bene Gesserit. Maybe the regrets of doing that with everything going on with Lila. It is such a clever title, but we live in that space. Like the scene with the horse is so brutal, and the foreshadowing of taking that, poisonous part of the animal, I thought it was, storytelling where you're like, that'll come back later. Chekhov's gun was that poison. And they cleverly made the horse what I thought paid off that poison. I thought we were going to see poison as, this sympathetic taking out of an animal's pain and suffering, this sympathy euthanasia, but then it's used to murder a family celebrating. A kind, by all accounts, family, a welcoming family in the woods, a woodsman hippie people. So brutal. And then cutting back to the brutality of the Harkonnen planet. Such incredible storytelling there. I think the this show is growing with each episode for me. I said episode 1, if I cared about these characters more, I would care about more than just the IP. I liked Dune enough that I didn't love the first episode. I liked it. I gave it a B+. I liked it. Didn't love it. But the Dune IP had me invested. By the second episode, I'm so invested in certain characters. Mark Strong's character, in, the Mother Superior, in certainly Bob Idaho there, Duncan something, crazy blue-eyed guy. But the pacing and the intrigue is such that you really need to be invested in the characters for the slow burn chess game that's being played to work. And now I'm so invested in the characters beyond even the IP. If this wasn't called Dune and we're now at 3 hours in, if we're 3 episodes in and I had no connection to this IP, I would still be invested in what happens to these characters next. And that's the incredible power of slow burn storytelling, of pacing this like a show, of not feeling like a 6-hour movie cut into 6. This feels like television. And I love that it's not a binge model. I love that week to week we get to have this conversation. I love that we get to care about these characters against every inclination we have. We shouldn't care about either generation of them. They've done horrible things. Every twist and turn we see is them doing bad things. I also love that they used the imagery from the first time we see the eyedropper in the agony, that we didn't need to see it in full again, but the moment we saw, it reminded us viscerally of everything we experienced from the first agony in episode 2. So there's a lot of nice shortcuts by having the weeks in between where you can remember what it felt like when you first saw that prior. And it's using world building fascinatingly. I love the production design still to this day. We got to see some a little older. Again, the Harkonnen world and seeing that wealth amassed. And we see Mark Addy looking a little more Skarsgardy. We get to see a lot of these characters echo into the future of eternity, of what they're going to become. And I really think it's funny because it's just after Penguin, but I love this trend of really dope, long, slow burn movies having really dope, long, slow burn seasons in between them. This is a great aperitif for Dune 3. The Penguin is a great aperitif for the Batman 2. It's a great, warm up your senses to get back into that world. And now I'm watching this on episode 3. I already want to watch Dune 1 and 2 again. I want to go home and listen to Hans Zimmer's vinyl. I have Dune 1 and 2 on vinyl, and I tell you, is an experience. But this show is giving me a taste of that in a new way. And I really think the power of long-form storytelling is in stories like this. It is the strength of telling stuff in flashback, out of chronological order. My favorite character in the show, my two favorite characters in the show, Bob Idaho and Mark Strong, they're not even in this episode for a frame. And I love that this gave me time to invest in all of these sisters, and especially in the sisterhood, which was above all else with so many different ways. It really hit on the evolution of the characters. It hit on my investment into them, even though I don't like anything that they're doing, which is so impressive to tell the story from that narrative. It gave me new lore. It also, gave me a lot of really cool lore about the voice, seeing the voice get formed and strengthened, and it being weak at first and going further. I love the actress that plays the young version of Mother Superior. I think her name is Jessica Barden. She is on a great, it's based on a comic book. That's not actually why I watched it, but it turns out it's based on a graphic novel. There's a show on Netflix called It's the End of the Bleeping World that I loved. And back then, it was 2018, I was like, this girl would be a great Jean Grey. And it's really funny that she now has the voice and has, that somewhat mental power, because apparently the casting director of Dune Prophecy agrees with me. So check out that show. If you haven't seen anything with Mark Addy, he is a delight. A Knight's Tale is my personal favorite. Olivia Williams is incredible in this. I really love what Emily Watson is doing. If you haven't seen Emily Watson in a movie out in theaters right now starring Cillian Murphy called Small Things Like These, it's a very similar role, and she is terrifying in it. She plays a nun, and that movie really hit me hard. It's a really incredible film, and I love that Cillian Murphy went from Oppenheimer making $1 billion in a biopic, almost $1 billion in a biopic, the biggest movie of last year, Best Picture, Best Actor, to a very small Irish film that means a lot to him and tells a very important story that needs to be told. And just to go from the biggest thing to raising awareness for something in your home country in a small film means a lot to me. So Emily Watson is also in that and a similar role to this. So check out all Small Things Like These, and It's the End of the Bleeping World, and A Knight's Tale. That's your homework if you want to watch some stuff. But either way, leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of episode 3. Did you love it as much as I did? It might be my favorite episode. So between 2 and 3. 2 was action, 3 was drama, but both at the height of their powers. Incredible, inventive action and world building in 2, incredible, inventive world building and drama in 3, and making me love every character more with every episode is all I could hope for with a show, especially a sci-fi drama like this that is so heady and so weird and so great. Dune Prophecy, really digging it. Hit that like if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment, as I said. And if you're not subscribed, please, welcome. Welcome to a weird little community. We're almost at 40K, and I love this little posse we're forming here. So press buttons. All right. I appreciate you. Bye, all.